and get started today. First, I just wanted to say good afternoon to everybody. I'm Christy Harrington. I'm the Director of Marketing here at PestRoutes. On behalf of my team and the PestRoutes organization, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for how to up your web presence and bullseye your target audience. Today's presentation is the second in a series we've arranged for you this year, so be sure to watch your inbox and social media feeds for information on our additional events coming your way very soon. Joining us today, we've got Uriah Hon and Jim Goodfriend. They're both part of the PestRoutes and Lobster Marketing family. I'll share a little background on them both, and I'll start first with Uriah. Uriah began his career with lobster marketing 3 years ago as a marketing strategist after spending 13 years in sales and sales management. His attention to customer service was noticed early on, so he was quickly promoted to manager of the customer success team where he is working today. Uriah lives in Ellsworth, Maine, and is an avid outdoorsman and health enthusiast, which is very fitting since his home overlooks the mountains, the ocean, and Acadia National Park. We're not jealous. Yes, we are. And also with us, we've got Jim Goodfriend. Jim started his career as a business development representative in software sales. He joined PestRoutes as a business development rep, and like Uriah, he was quickly noticed and promoted, in his case, to lead of business development. He now works as an account executive on our sales team. Jim is an avid New York sports fan. He made sure that we put an emphasis on New York. We can't confuse this with any other city. He also enjoys traveling with friends and adventuring with his dog. Welcome, you guys.
Hey, thanks, Christy, and thanks everybody else that's joined us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really excited to be here and looking forward to today's discussion. So let's get going.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, thank you guys for all coming in. And one of the things I wanted to dive in first is kind of the elephant in the room, right? Digital marketing and COVID. The pandemic has been rough and it's been a challenging time for many of us, and it's changed a lot of the things that we do. It's changed the way we eat and socialize, the way we work, and I think most importantly, it's changed the way we use the internet. So after looking at that, when it comes to the internet, we only saw that the use of the internet increased more than ever, and it puts a large focus on the need for digital marketing and the digital presence that people are seeking out. So looking at that, data usage has increased 47% during COVID-19, and it played a large part in changing internet habits across America. So internet usage alone increased 25%. Within only a few days through mid-March of 2020. So, sites such as like YouTube, for example, saw a 15% increase in usage, and Facebook saw more than 27% increase. Networking apps that many of us use, say here in the pest control industry, like Nextdoor, they saw even larger jumps at 73%. So when we look at the overall internet change, it becomes pretty obvious why you want to increase and optimize your online presence. And so for service industries, pest control specifically, we saw many companies capitalize on more new customers in 2020 than they did see in years past. And this is a direct result from homeowners, becoming more aware of the pest problems they're facing by increasing the opportunity to actually see them. I know for me personally, I had no idea I had rodents in my attic. When I was in the office, I spent very little time at home. I was there, enough to grab a bite to eat and rest a bit like most of us. But after being home each day, I started to hear that movement in my attic. And so it became, far more apparent on storm days and moving into the winter especially. But, these sounds that I probably heard at one point and never really thought much of were, now pretty clear that I needed to do something about them. And so, upon closer look, I was able to, get ahead of what was already some, pretty terribly chewed insulation and some new entry points from that, they'd made along the way. And, the same goes for a lot of other homeowners too.
Right. If I could jump in here with a quick question. When we talk about this, uptick in YouTube views and some of these other things that are happening online, where do we draw that correlation between those kind of uptakes on some of these other sites and what we're seeing in terms of this increase in pest control, traffic and online engagement?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, what we see, right, is that people turn to the internet for information before they solve their problem. When you take channels like YouTube, there's a great source of information. People like to watch videos. They seek these things out. They seek the answers out. Can they fix it themselves, or what pests are they dealing with? And And, if we can get in front of these customers by, let's say, being on YouTube, for example, we're one step ahead to achieving our goal as in gaining new customers.
When we talk about being in front of these customers, I guess one other question I have is, when we talk about being online, what is the difference in having just like a website as opposed to being one of these web presences using some of these other tools? Where do you kind of draw the distinction between those two?
Sure. So, a lot of people have websites. They're not uncommon, but not everybody has a website that shows up where they want it to. The internet's full of information, it's full of websites, but there's a really small window to get in front of your user. And so we look at having a website versus having a web presence. That web presence is really the ability to be in front of your users in all case scenarios, whether it's to have that website on the first page or be in that YouTube channel, be a part of social media marketing. The web presence is really much more important than just having a website, but having a website's certainly a big piece of it.
Gotcha. Cool.
Awesome. So I wanted to look at some of the stats that kind of support that. Lynn, if we could take a look at those, that'd be great. So when we look at some of the search stats, these in particular are for just the one term pest control specifically, and what happens, across the internet when somebody searches for that. And the one thing we see, it's up and down, and we know that pest control, depending on where you are, is a very seasonal service, definitely. But as a whole, when we look towards the end, right, towards 2021, what we can see is on average, it's more than what it was in the years past. And it really, again, just supports that, there's a lot of people out there, they're looking for pest control, and it's extremely important to be out there in front of them.
Now, it seems here on this chart that there's kind of this history of an up and down trend throughout the years. What do we kind of see with COVID changing these things? Is it just a quick thing where people are home and we're going to see a quick update and things are going to go to the norm after this, or how does that kind of work with these trends?
Yeah, from what we see, all signs point to this not slowing down. When we look at the remote work environment, it's more of a norm, right? It's common now. A lot of folks haven't gone back into the office. They're still at home. So we're still experiencing the trends that we saw when COVID hit, where they're at home, they're seeing these pests, they're online, they're searching for it. And that still seems to prove true today.
And now a year after being, into this work from home kind of norm, is everything that we're seeing kind of in line with over the previous years, or where do we kind of draw that distinction?
Yeah, and I think that the reality of it is what we're seeing more activity. Looking at a lot of companies across the country, 2020 was not a bad year for them when it comes to obtaining new customers. And again, more people are out there. They're looking for these somebody to solve these problems. And so business didn't end up bad for most pest control companies at the end of the year. One thing I want to jump into is just top digital marketing tactics to really employ while you're doing this, right? There's a lot of them. We know that marketing is a huge world. So just as a heads up, we are going to throw up a poll question, and we'd love to get your guys' input if we can. So to start an optimized website, it's a great way to start. The internet really isn't a secret anymore, right? We all have it. We're all aware of it. Most of us are probably using it. We're all here today. So, let's take a look real quick at how a website operates from a high level, because I think that is, really important. Quite simply, when we look at it, a user, your customers, hopefully, type in a question into a search engine, and there's multiple of those, but that could be how to get rid of rodents, or how can I get my home inspected for bugs, or maybe they become, far more specific and they say something, what type of animals live in the attic of my main home. All in all, the search engine decides which website, best answers those questions. And they use a number of variables, including the content of the website, the authority of your website, and they make that determination of, what's the credible company and who answers this question, and including the review ratings of your company. And they present, these results to these users. And so, once it's decided, again, it kind of lists all of these options on what we call the search engine results page, right? And we're all, all aware of that likely. We all see it, we use it, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of internet users out there. They ask a lot of different questions. Many are similar, but many are worded, differently. And most importantly, some of these questions have never been asked before. And then, of course, there's a lot that are fairly common. And a website's job in the end is to capitalize and answer each and every one of those questions. And so having an optimized website that's up to date with Google's best practices, full of content, that's what helps improve your rankings over time and get you further up that search page and makes it more likely for you to be deemed the answer and get in front of your customers.
And real quick, when we
Yeah,
talk
please.
about a optimized website, right? Where do we see the difference between, visually, an optimized website versus like a non-optimized website? What are some things that are different between one and the other?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? So when we look at the aesthetics of a website, we know there's a lot of ways to optimize a website. There's a lot of bad ways to do what we call SEO, the optimization of that website, or good ways. But aesthetically, it could be hard to tell, right? Without the appropriate tools and the knowledge behind it, they can, a really nice website can really underperform. So aesthetically, we don't always see a difference, and there's a lot of factors also, behind closed doors. Those websites adhering to Google's best practices, which you might not see.
And then when we talk about making sure that your site answers questions, I mean, how does a site, how do I, as someone who would create a website, make sure that I'm answering questions that I don't even know what people are necessarily asking? How do I make sure I have that information to help establish that authority?
Definitely. Well, the perks of being a kind of a marketing company, right, is that we have a lot of tools that we use. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And so what we're able to do is actually look at, say, someone's specific area, and we can determine what are the people in that area asking for questions, and then we can produce content that answers those questions. And so, again, with a combination of all these tools, we're really able to kind of capitalize on what is current, what's being asked, and more specifically, what's being asked right now. And I think that's a big part of it. One of the next things I want to talk about, and I noticed you guys the poll, and it was awesome to see everyone that participated in that answered yes, we're using Google Ads and or paid ads, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Oftentimes what we see, there's new websites or websites with limited content, and they end up falling far back on Google search pages. We know it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to get up there and be on that first page. Research shows that most internet users don't go past that first page, which makes paid ads extremely important. But while a website is growing and building the authority and credibility that it needs to be found on the first page, it's important that we take the opportunity to be there any way we can. And there's multiple paid ad platforms, but Google Ads is a really common one, and it's a great way to do that. So when you look at Google Ads, it lets companies participate in a paid auction, and the primary differentiator between really you and your competitor ends up being that budget and a couple other small things like the offers that you have to have. But paid ads are shown at the top and bottom of each page and allow you to present a short, attractive message to those potential customers. And so, it's a great way for your company to get your company name out there and to get alongside those toughest competitors that maybe have been in that organic world with that website longer than you have. And it really does a great job in supplementing online presence.
Now, when it comes to these paid advertisements, is that something that's good strategically speaking in the long run, or is this something that companies should do more in the beginning while you're developing that authority and establishing your web presence, to have the paid ads and then kind of go away from that as you go deeper down the hole?
Yeah, and that's a question we get a lot, right? So when we look at a search engine results page, we break it down into kind of 4 sections, essentially. The top 2 are really going to be, those paid ad platforms, and then you have your organic results, and then of course the Google My Business, which we'll talk about in a bit. Ultimately, any company that wants to be a top competitor probably ends up and remains in all 4 of those places. That's going to be the best way to get ahead of your customers. Ultimately, if for some reason you didn't show up in one of those places, you want to have the opportunity to show up in the other 3.
And do paid ads help you gain authority quicker, or is it just kind of like having different channels and being able to work multiple channels?
Yeah, so it doesn't actually affect your website in most case scenarios, right? So what it actually does, it allows you just to kind of be in a place while your website's gaining that authority. So they're treated very separately. The strategies that revolve around them are very separate, and the success behind them is very separate. But they certainly do, complement each other very well.
Gotcha. Cool.
And then one of the things we've mentioned a little bit here too is content, right? And so unfortunately, a website just doesn't show up on its own, and it takes ongoing effort to make sure that it does. And so, we do that in a variety of ways, but producing relevant content on a regular basis really increases your opportunity at answering your customers' most common questions. And like we spoke about. And when we look at 2020, a lot of top pest control companies, they blogged in between 8 and 12 times a month. And there's multiple types of content your site can be accommodated with, and each has its own purpose. So, really depending on goals and ongoing content really is a great way to stay relevant, improve rankings, and encourage your users to click through to your website by answering those questions that it doesn't already answer.
Now, aside from blog posts, what are some of these other kind of content pieces that most companies are kind of employing right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. Some of the common ones we see is, what we call location pages. They're pages on your website that speak specifically about maybe a city, right? And it talks about the pest pressures in that city. And that's important because we see a lot of users when they get on the internet, they don't search for rodents, right? They search for rodents in Bangor, Maine, or something, much more specific to them, because they want to see that the content that they're reading, they want to make sure it's relevant. And so, that's one of the really important ones. Pest identification pages. A lot of people out there start by looking for information, like we talked about, and these pest identification pages, they tell about these pests. And we see many people go to the internet and say, what are these little bugs with wings? And we want to be able to answer that. And the best way to do it is to talk about that bug with wings and provide more information. And that plays a great role in the long run, because if they find you to answer that question, they're more likely to come back to you when they want you to solve that problem.
And then I also heard you mention that, companies are posting on average 8 to 12 blog posts, in a given month. So what are some best practices? I mean, between balancing your web presence, all these blog posts, and then obviously having to focus on the business side of things, what are some best practices? How are companies kind of handling maintaining this website, putting all this content out, and focusing on the other aspects of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the best part of having a marketing company behind you, right? They take care of it. We do the research. What are people looking for? What are the people in your area looking for? And we make sure that that's produced. It's on your website. It's relevant. And it's every situation is very unique. And I think that that's important, whether it's blog posts or location pages, every company has a goal. Each one of those products is really used to achieve that goal. And it's, when you kind of remove that pressure of having to determine which ones you need and put that on that marketing company to let them do it, it really saves a lot of time and allows you to kind of focus on that business.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah, so I wanted to, we kind of briefly touched on the Google My Business, and I'd like to kind of go into that more because it's a big part of a web presence now. And so, one thing we know to be absolutely true is that your Google My Business listing is becoming, increasingly important. It's one of the primary results on a mobile phone, and a large portion of the page on a web result. Google puts a large emphasis on your Google My Business listing. And so, the GMB, as we call it, the listing, it tells your customers things like when you're open, the services that you offer. It provides pictures of your business. It can give your customers the ability to call you directly or even get directions to your business. And when we look at that, there's a couple different types of listing. That's a really common, thing that we talk about on our end. And so there's a physical location listing, and it's extremely effective. And it has, when you have a verifiable address and customers can visit your location. And then you have the service area business listing, and that allows you to essentially show your potential customers on a map your service area. And so, one of the most important aspects of Google My Business, though, is your reviews, right? And not only does it tell customers how credible you are, it's also a signal to Google directly when they decide, the rankings, and when customers are making the decisions, they're going to lean on that. And so, your Google My Business listing has a lot of value also in promoting things like your most recent offers or your most recent content that's on your website. And much like a website, making sure that it's up to date, it's accurate, and the posts and for your customers are there that encourage them to kind of choose your business over others. And in 2021, again, it's become far more important than we've seen it become in the past.
Now, does Google My Business work on similar authority as any kind of like search engine when it comes to displaying results, or how does, do they have a separate authority kind of way of handling things?
Yeah, so it is similar. Now it does look at some different signals, right? So now the strategy behind it is similar. We need to maintain ongoing efforts into each one of those to continue to get them to improve. Those reviews, for example, not something your website necessarily plays a part in as much, but that Google My Business, that's a signal to Google, just like authority is for the website. So definitely separate strategies, but they certainly act the same. They both require efforts to improve their rankings and show up on that page, because Google doesn't show, unfortunately, every listing or every website that's available when a customer types in that question.
And then I also heard you mention earlier, kind of consolidating all of your information and making sure it's consistent across the board. I've heard of companies using, different kind of tracking numbers to figure out where different leads are coming in. So you have different numbers out there, on the web and kind of floating around in the world in general. So how do these different kind of tracking numbers, that isn't going to be just one set, company listing, how does that play when it comes to Google My Business?
Yeah, sure. So we look at what we call the NAP citation, or the name, address, and phone number, and it's extremely important that that is accurate and consistent across all of the internet. And if it isn't, unfortunately, Google does see that and penalizes generally the person that has that incorrect information out there. So what we're able to do actually is we're able to look at where did that person come from. And when they get to your website, we can present them a very specific tracking number. Google doesn't see that, but the customer does. And so we're able to look back and say, hey, this customer called you from your website, but here's where they started. It was your Google My Business listing. So, that's really important. But overall, those NAP citations, they have to be correct. That's a huge part of it.
Gotcha.
So, and just as a heads up, everybody, we're going to throw one more quick poll at you, and love to hear what you have to say. So I want to look at, buy pest control online and buying pest control online, and most importantly, why it's important to, your business. And so in 2021, it's not a secret that most customers would prefer to make a purchase on their own with as little human contact as possible, right? I'm guilty as charged there. We see everything moving towards the idea of e-commerce popping up in everything from clothes to groceries, and having the ability to have that same e-commerce experience for home services is an increasing desire, and making the ability to buy pest control online becomes much more important. So, we know pest control is an emotionally driven service. Many customers, they get online, they want a solution to their problem, and they want it now. And we've seen this time and time again in the past. If a customer calls and they can't get a hold of you and they have to leave a message, let's say, the reality of it is when they hang up, they move on and they seek out an immediate solution. They try to reach the person that can assure them that that's going to be taken care of now. And so giving your customers the option to purchase their pest control online is the next step, right? And so while still allowing customers to call or submit their information like they normally would, they now have the ability to schedule services, and they can do that on the day they're choosing. They can pay for that service and ultimately have, a pest control company come in to their home and do that service with very minimal contact. And so, again, this is just really the next step in the age of the internet, and it's one that we really feel passionate about getting ahead on.
Yeah, and if I could jump in here, I'm sure some of y'all have been wondering if I'm here just to lob questions up to Uriah, or if I want to talk about PestRoutes. And so when we talk about buying pest control online, that kind of ties in really well with PestRoutes software. So there's a couple of things when it comes to lead management that go into it, right? So one is kind of following up with them. The other one is making it easy to schedule, as Uriah's kind of touched on. And then the third way that you want to make sure when it comes to doing these online schedules is to make sure that you're kind of putting yourself in this position to optimize all of these things. So to kind of go back to the beginning, the first thing we want to touch on when it comes to leads, when we talk about all these online presence marketing, it's the idea of driving leads to your business. And so what happens with any of these leads is there's a time value attached to them, right? Like the likelihood of a company being able to connect with a lead is substantially higher within the first 15 minutes than any time after those first 15 minutes. And why is that? It's because that's when the person's sitting at home, right? They're either in front of their computer, they're on their phone calling you, right? They're in that moment committed to doing something to fix this problem that they are seeing happening in their home, right? They see an ant scurry across their counter or on their dog food, like I saw the other day. And it's like, man, I got to go and get this thing addressed right now. So typically the issue that companies are running into is that most people work a 9 to 5, right? So even though we talk about people being home now in the age of COVID, a lot of people are still going back to the office. And so when it comes time for them to connect with a pest control company, y'all are already out of the office for the day. These people are at home. They want to have this problem solved right away. And so they're going online. And if you're not there in a position to respond to them in that first 15 minutes, you give the advantage to any of your competitors who may be, sitting in front of their computer or have a way to connect with them. So with PestRoutes, one of the things that you can do is automate. You can automate a ton of things throughout the system, but when it comes to lead management, you could actually automate your outreach to your customer, right? So when someone comes on to your website and wants to get information or gives you their information saying, contact me, I need a quote or I need information, instead of having to go and manually send out an email or like a text message, you could actually set up what we call a trigger rule. Trigger rule is just something, what do you want the system to make happen for you based on certain criteria? So, when someone comes in, this trigger rule can automatically trigger itself where it's going to send out a text message, send out an email, and let that customer know, hey, we got your information. We see that you're interested in a service. Let's set up a time to connect so we can get this all done, right? And at that point, they're going to know that, you're respecting their time. You see them as a valuable customer. You're reaching out to them right away. And the likelihood of you being able to win their business goes up a ton. So again, there's a lot of things with PestRoutes that you can automate. But for the point of this right now, lead management, being able to send out those immediate correspondence is something that's really important. And again, it's something you set up one time on the back end of the system, and then it just goes and take action on it right away. So you can think of it as, I just call it like an easy bake oven, set it and forget it, and sleep easy knowing your leads are being worked in a timely manner. The next piece that I like to kind of jump into is when it comes to kind of scheduling, right? Uriah talked about it. I'll echo his sentiment. The less I need to interact with a person, generally speaking, the happier I am, right? Everything's done online. Even now, I could call a restaurant and order food. I'd rather just go on Uber Eats so I don't have to talk to anyone. And, pest control is no different on that. So what's really great is that through this partnership between PestRoutes and Lobster, your customers are actually able to put themselves directly onto your schedule. And again, today's buyer is looking for the path of least resistance. So it's really important to meet your customers where they are in their buying process and be able to accommodate them where they want to kind of buy. So like I said, if you can tell me that I could go on your website, book a service, you could come out here tomorrow and take care of the ants over here, the likelihood of me booking that service is astronomically higher than if I have to call into a bunch of different companies and all these other things. So with this buy it now feature, you're actually able to let your customers book that service, pay for it like Uriah was talking about, and then put themselves directly on a calendar, right? So they're not even waiting for a call back at this point. They know that they booked it, and you've now put yourself in a position where you're not even trying to win the business. You've already won it. You got everything done, and you made it as easy as possible for those clients to go ahead and book that service. The last piece that kind of goes in with that is efficient routing and scheduling, right? Inefficiencies are what cost companies money in the long run. And one of the biggest, cost centers that we see when we talk to different pest control companies is inefficiencies when it comes to scheduling and routing, right? Typically, you got at least one person doing it. You're just looking at Google Maps, this, that, the other thing is really time consuming, really tedious, and you don't really know, if this route is actually going to be efficient or not. And so the idea is that you want to make sure your technicians or yourselves aren't spending all your time in front of their windshield, wasting gas, wasting money, everything like that. You want to make sure that you're able to hit as many stops as possible. And so with PestRoutes, when it comes to the scheduling side, you can actually complete a month's worth of scheduling in 30 minutes. And not only is the scheduling prep piece going to be a ton quicker, we also have the ability to help optimize those routes. And with our route optimization, what we've seen is that it's an increase in efficiency by 12%. Now, the average person, the average technician does somewhere between 8 to 10 stops a day. And so that 12% bump actually equates to an extra stop per day per technician that you have out there on the road. So not only are you able to do more stops on a day-to-day basis, you're going to save time on gas depreciation, all these other things. And the system, this intelligent routing that we're able to do, takes into account a ton of different variables. You can say where you want to start and stop your day, drive time, service time, school zone, speed limit, hazmats. If you want to only take right turn onlys, for example, you can even put that in there. And so the system's able to put, all your stops in an order in a way that makes the most amount of sense, so that you are able to make the most out of every single day. Just to give you a real example of it, we actually had a company sign up with us about a year ago. They were using some form of intelligent routing beforehand. Obviously, it wasn't that good, because when they made the switch over to us, they actually saved $1,800 in their first month and then $2,400 in the second month, just through making their routes more efficient, saving all that money. And so it's really something where you're able to add that next level to the business. And a lot of this is done through this integration, this partnership with PestRoutes and Lobster.
Yeah, and before we end, I'd love to ask you guys, one more question here, but I want to talk about, really tracking all of that, and how do we make that work, right? How do we bring that all together? And so, developing a tool to track your online presence is effective. And Lobster, with the help of PestRoutes, has developed Compass. And so Compass is a web-based tool that allows users instant access to multiple aspects of their online presence. It looks like most of you are using quite a few tools, and I think that really goes to across the board, right? Most people do. When we look at Compass, we're trying to remove those other tools, and so what we've done is Compass allows businesses and business owners to track the user life stories from where they came in to the amount of money they paid for your services. Along the way, it does a lot of other things. It allows you to listen to the phone calls that are made to your business. It'll allow you to see the form submissions, provide insight into the performance of each individual page of your website if you want to see it. It monitors all those metrics that most companies want to see, like cost per lead and cost per actual paying customer. And you can do things even like respond to Google reviews and assess the data that's associated to your Google My Business listing. And so, the important part of it is it's real time. It updates, when you want it to, and now you don't need another person. You don't have to wait on anybody, right? And so, gaining insight into, say, what cities are providing your website traffic, or which blog has piqued your customer interest, or maybe even how much revenue was booked today. You can do that now, and you can do it as quickly as you'd like. So, with the ability to study traffic trends, you'll gain more insight into your organic efforts and what they're doing for you and your website as a whole. And I think also, you can track things like print collateral, gathered reviews, and find industry news. Some of those things that can really help you look at your business as a whole that might not even be directly tied to your website.
Great. Thank you so much, you guys. That's awesome. So this next section here, we've reserved some time for some audience questions. So I want to encourage everybody that hasn't already done so to go ahead and submit your questions for Uriah and Jim. You can use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer as many as we can. And while you're doing that, though, I'm going to ask that Lynn, our moderator, post the link to sign up for a free demo of the PestRoutes and Lobster Marketing platforms in the chat. And for anyone who is not already a customer of both packages, this is really a great opportunity to see the combined power of the product suite and learn how it can take your business to the next level. I think Jim did a really great job transitioning that and showing you how it ties together, but we can give you a deeper dive into that. Okay, are we ready for questions?
Absolutely.
All right, let's see here. All right. How do I know that my content is not the same as the pest control company I am competing against?
That's a really common question. And it's a really important one because it can't be, right? We want to do better than that company you're competing against. So at Lobster Marketing, what we're actually doing is we write all of our content for each company custom. We look at their area, the pests they service, how they do business, even as deep as words that they do or don't want to use. And we write that for them to make sure that their content is unique.
Great. Okay. I've got another question here. Jim, this one may be for you. If the customer is able to route themselves, how does that allow efficiency in scheduling if not in areas of already booked work?
Yeah, and great question. So one of the great things when it comes to kind of pest route scheduling is we can show you, how close you are to different locations. So when a customer wants to put themselves on a map, it's not going to put them, 1,000 miles away from someone else. It's something where through this routing system that we have, being able to track their location and what already is on your calendar, make sure that they're putting themselves in a time that's going to make the most amount of sense. So you're not what I call ping ponging all around town, going left side, right side, north, south, east, west, whatever it's going to be. It could help with that, kind of indicating how far you are from different places and things of that nature.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Our next question here, Uriah. So how do I know how much to spend on my marketing? It's a good question around budgeting here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard question to answer, but there is an answer. Ultimately, what we are able to do as well as look at each company and their situation and what they want to achieve. Every company's goals are different. It's really a matter of how fast you want to achieve that goal and what is that goal specifically. So, we're able to look at what is it going to take to, what are you going to have to invest to be a top competitor? Do you want to go straight to the top? Do you want to work your way to the top? And we can really, again, like content, we can develop a very unique strategy that correlates.
Great. Thank you. Okay, you spent some time talking about websites earlier, Uriah. So we've got a great question here around this. What if I already have a website? Do I start over? I think people might be concerned how they maximize all the things you're talking about.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe you do, but we don't encourage that. There's a lot of everybody, most of the people I should say that come over to Lobster, they have a website, and that's not a bad thing. What we're able to do is actually identify what aspects of that website that are there now are important, and we can, bring them over and not only bring them over, but make them better when we do. And we don't have to worry about, your other website, anything that maybe we don't use. We're able to point that credibility right over to the new website. So having a website isn't a problem at all.
That's great. I'm sure they're glad to hear that. Okay, well, it looks like we've got all of our questions in. So I want to thank everybody for your participation. Those were great questions. And thank you again, Uriah and Jim. I appreciate you joining us and sharing your expertise and insights. Thanks everybody again for attending. And I want to point everybody to pay attention to their inbox and their social media. We've got another webinar coming up in June. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you again next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for coming.